The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber had not opened for a new species in over 3,000 years. Today, beings from across the galaxy gathered to watch something that many thought would never happen again. The chamber was huge, big enough to hold a small city. Its walls were made of crystal that showed the stars outside, and the floor could change to make any being comfortable. Representatives floated, walked, and moved in ways that had no name. Some looked like giant insects with metal parts attached to their bodies. Others were balls of pure energy that glowed different colors when they talked. A few looked like living rocks that sang instead of speaking. The Astral Dominion sent their eldest member, Vexathari, who looked like a tall, thin shadow with too many arms. The hegemony of Score brought their War Marshal, Sectar, whose body was covered in sharp crystal plates that clicked when he moved. They were all here to see the newest species join the Council. Every new species that came before had been the same. They were scared, weak, and begging for protection from the dangerous things in space. The void swarms that ate entire star systems, the reality storms that could make planets disappear, the things that lived in the deep void that even the oldest beings feared to name. The chamber fell silent as the doors began to open. Everyone expected to see a trembling creature that would fall to the ground and beg for help. Instead, a human walked in. Taemin wore a simple black suit that looked plain compared to all the strange forms around him. He was not very tall, and his dark hair was neat and short. He walked slowly and calmly to the center of the chamber. His steps made no sound on the crystal floor. He did not look scared. He did not look around in wonder at all the alien beings. He just walked forward like he belonged there. When he reached the center, Taemin stopped and bowed. It was a respectful bow, not the deep bow of someone begging for mercy. Then he spoke in perfect galactic standard, the language that all species used to talk to each other. "Honored beings," he said in a clear, calm voice, "I am Taemin of Earth. We come seeking not protection, but partnership." The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound was the soft humming of the chamber's energy systems. Partnership. No new species had ever asked for partnership. They always came begging for the Council's protection from the cosmic horrors that filled the dark spaces between stars. Elder Vexathari's shadow form rippled with shock. In his long life, he had seen dozens of new species enter this chamber. They always came with the same story. Their worlds were being attacked by void swarms, or they had lost ships to reality storms, or they had detected the movement of deep, void entities near their space. They came asking the Council to protect them, to teach them how to hide, to give them safe routes through space. But this human spoke of partnership like he had something to offer. The chamber exploded into noise. Beings clicked, buzzed, sang, and made sounds that human ears could not hear. The translators worked overtime to turn all the different languages into words everyone could understand. Most of what they said was the same. Impossible. Arrogant. They don't understand. War Marshal Sectar's crystal plates clicked faster, which meant he was angry or excited. "Human," he said, his voice like glass breaking. "Your species is new to space. You have been beyond your world for less than 200 years. What could you possibly offer beings who have traveled the stars for millions of years?" Taemin did not seem bothered by the question. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. With a simple touch, the device projected images into the air above the chamber. The first image was a star map, but not like any the Council had seen before. "We offer knowledge of sectors you have marked as lost," Taemin said. The map showed areas of space that glowed red on Council charts, meaning they were too dangerous to enter. But Taemin's map showed those same areas filled with detailed information about stars, planets, and safe travel routes. "We offer solutions to engineering problems that have troubled the Council for centuries." The images changed to show technical drawings that made several beings lean forward with interest. These were designs for shields that could protect ships from reality storms and engines that could travel through areas where space itself was unstable. "And we offer proof that first contact with the void swarms is not only possible, but successful." The final image made the entire chamber fall silent again. It showed a human ship floating in space next to creatures that looked like living darkness, with too many teeth. But the creatures were not attacking. They were clearly communicating with the ship. Elder Vexthari felt something he had not experienced in thousands of years. Fear. Not fear of the cosmic horrors that had always threatened the galaxy, but fear that everything the Council thought they knew was wrong. "Impossible," whispered Ilthara, the wisdom keeper of the crystalline Gentai collective. Her voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. "The void swarms cannot be reasoned with. They consume everything they touch. Our greatest minds have studied them for eons." Taman nodded respectfully. "With great respect, Wisdom Keeper, your greatest minds studied them from a distance. We studied them up close. The difference in perspective led to very different conclusions." The human touched his device again, and the image changed to show the inside of a human ship. Creatures that the Council had feared for millions of years were working alongside human crew members. They were not prisoners or slaves. They were clearly partners working together on tasks that no single species could accomplish alone. How? The question came from a dozen beings at once, in a dozen different languages. "We listened," Tamin said simply. "Instead of assuming they were monsters, we assumed they were trying to communicate. Instead of running away, we tried to understand. Instead of seeing them as enemies, we saw them as neighbors we had not met yet." The Oracle of Thanox, the oldest being in known space, had been silent throughout the presentation. She was so old that most species thought she was a myth. Her form was hard to look at directly, like trying to see the shape of a shadow made of starlight. When she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of cosmic ages. "Young human," she said, her voice like the whisper of dying stars. "Do you understand what you have done? These forces you call neighbors have destroyed civilizations older than your sun." Taman turned to face the Oracle, and for the first time since entering the chamber, his expression became serious. "Ancient One, with the deepest respect, we believe you have misunderstood what destroyed those civilizations. We have studied the historical records, we have examined the ruins, and we have spoken with the forces themselves." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "The civilizations that were destroyed had one thing in common. They had stopped growing, they had stopped exploring, they had stopped learning. They became so focused on protecting what they had that they forgot to become what they could be." The eye chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. It was not just shock or anger, it was fear. Deep, primal fear that came from hearing a truth that challenged everything they believed about survival. War Marshal Sektar's crystal plates had stopped clicking entirely, which meant he was either about to attack or was completely stunned. "Are you saying," he asked slowly, "that hiding from these forces was wrong?" "I am saying," Tamin replied calmly, "that survival and growth are not the same thing. You have survived for millions of years by avoiding the unknown. We have grown by embracing it, and the cosmic forces respect growth more than survival." Elder Vexathari's shadow form began to pulse with dark energy. "Prove it," he demanded. "If what you say is true, then prove that your way is better than ours." Tamin smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a mocking smile or a confident smile. It was the smile of someone who had been hoping for exactly this. "Question. We would be honored to provide proof," he said. "But first, we must ask, are you prepared to see the galaxy as it really is, rather than as you have always believed it to be?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, like a doorway that could not be closed once opened. Every being in the chamber understood that whatever came next would change everything. The old ways of hiding and surviving would be revealed as either wisdom or cowardice, and humanity, the newest and smallest member of the galactic community, was offering to show them which one it really was. The silence stretched on as ancient beings wrestled with a choice they had never expected to face. Continue living in the safety of ignorance, or risk everything to learn the truth about the universe they had spent eons fearing. In that moment, Taemin stood quietly in the center of the chamber, waiting for their answer with the patience of someone who knew that the universe itself was on his side. 3 days had passed since Taemin first entered the council chamber. Normal council sessions lasted only a few hours, just long enough to welcome a new species and assign them a protection status. But nothing about this session was normal. The chamber had become the center of galactic attention as beings from across space watched humanity's impossible claims unfold. The questions had not stopped. Elder Vexthari had demanded detailed explanations for every piece of technology Taemin had shown. War Marshal Sektar wanted to know how humans had survived in sectors that even score warriors avoided. The Gentai collective kept asking for mathematical proofs that should have been impossible to provide, but the most disturbing questions came from the Oracle of Thanox. She had lived long enough to remember when some of the lost sectors had been populated by thriving civilizations. She knew what had happened to them, and she could not understand how any species could have contact with those forces and survive. On the third day, Taemin made an announcement that changed everything. "Honored beings," he said, standing in the same spot where he had first introduced himself. "You have asked many questions about how humanity has achieved what you believed impossible. But you are asking the wrong questions entirely." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed to quiet down. "You ask how we survived the void swarms," Taemin continued. "You ask how we crossed reality storm barriers. You ask how we made contact with deep void entities. But survival was never our goal. Contact was never accidental. We did not stumble into these achievements." He touched his device again, and new images appeared in the air. These were not star maps or technical drawings. They were historical records from Earth, showing humans doing things that made no sense to the assembled aliens. You should be asking why we chose to seek out the very forces that you spend your lives avoiding. The images showed human ships deliberately flying toward void swarms instead of away from them. They showed research stations built inside reality storms, with humans studying the chaotic energy from within. Most shocking of all, they showed humans opening doorways to the deep void and stepping through them voluntarily. War Marshal Sektar's crystal plates began clicking rapidly. "Madness," he hissed. "No rational species would seek out destruction." "That," said a new voice, "is exactly the kind of thinking that has kept the galaxy stagnant for millions of years." The voice belonged to Dr. Yunji, who appeared in the chamber as a shimmering hologram. She was broadcasting from somewhere in space, her image clear but obviously coming from very far away. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Dr. Yunji is our chief xenobiologist," Taemin explained. "She has spent the last 10 years living among void swarms and studying their behavior patterns." Elder Vexithari's shadow form rippled with shock. "Living among them? That is impossible. No organic being can survive in their presence." Dr. Yunji smiled. "You are right that no organic being can survive in their presence if they treat the swarms as enemies. But if you treat them as complex ecosystems with their own needs and communication methods, survival becomes not only possible but comfortable." She gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show her surroundings. The assembled council beings saw something that challenged their deepest fears. Dr. Yunji was standing on what appeared to be a research platform floating in open space. Around her, void swarm entities moved like giant living ships, their dark forms pulsing with energy patterns that almost looked like language, Dr. Yunji said, answering the unspoken question. "The energy patterns you see are their language. It took us 3 years to learn the basic grammar, but once we could communicate, everything changed." The Oracle of Thanox spoke, her voice filled with ancient terror. "Child, you do not understand. We have records of these creatures consuming entire star systems, billions of lives lost to their hunger." "With respect, Ancient One," Dr. Yunji replied, "your records show the end result, but not the cause. We have spoken with the swarms about those historical events. From their perspective, they were not attacking. They were trying to save those civilizations from something much worse." The chamber erupted in chaos again, but this time the noise was different. It was not just shock or anger. It was the sound of worldviews cracking under the weight of new information. "Explain," demanded the Wisdom Keeper Ilthara. Dr. Yunji touched controls that the council beings could not see, and the image changed, to show historical data that humanity had somehow obtained from the void swarms themselves. It was a record of events from millions of years ago, but told from a completely different perspective. The civilizations that were consumed had all made the same mistake, Dr. Yunji explained. They had discovered ways to tap into cosmic energy sources that they did not understand. In each case, they were about to cause reality storms that would have destroyed not just their own systems, but entire sectors of space. The data showed star maps with expanding areas of dangerous energy that would have consumed hundreds of worlds if left unchecked. The void swarms intervened to prevent galactic disasters. They absorbed the dangerous energy and dispersed it safely, but to outside observers it looked like they were destroying civilizations for no reason. War Marshal Sektar had gone completely still, which was the score equivalent of deep shock. "You are saying that the greatest threat in our history was actually our protector?" "We are saying," said another new voice, "that your history is incomplete." This voice belonged to Commander Jae-sung, whose image appeared next to Dr. Yunji's. He was broadcasting from the bridge of what was clearly a human starship, but the design was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The hull seemed to be made of the same dark material as void swarm entities, and energy patterns flowed across its surface like living thoughts. "Commander Jae-sung commands our exploration vessel, Indomitable," Taemin explained. "He is currently navigating the interior of an active reality storm." The council chamber fell silent again. Navigating inside a reality storm was supposed to be impossible. The chaotic energy could tear apart both matter and the laws of physics themselves. "The phenomena you call cosmic horrors," Commander Jae-sung said, his voice calm despite his impossible location, "are not random forces of destruction. They are tools used by intelligences far older and more advanced than any species in this galaxy." He gestured to his crew, and the council beings saw humans working alongside creatures they had never imagined could exist. Beings made of living, energy-operated controls that seemed to reshape reality itself. Entities that looked like geometric impossibilities handled navigation through space that folded in on itself. "The reality storms are not natural disasters," Commander Jae-sung continued. "They are cosmic engineering projects. The beings who create them are trying to repair damage done to the structure of space-time itself." Elder Vexithari's form began to pulse with dark energy. "What kind of damage?" "The kind caused by millions of years of civilizations hiding in safe zones and refusing to explore," Commander Jae-sung replied. "When intelligent species avoid the challenging areas of space, those areas begin to decay. The cosmic forces have been trying to fix that decay, but they needed partners who were willing to help rather than hide." Dr. Yunji nodded in agreement. "The void swarms, the reality storm entities, and the deep void intelligences have all been waiting for a species that would choose growth over safety. They have been lonely for millions of years, surrounded by civilizations that feared them, instead of trying to understand them." The Oracle of the Nox spoke again, but this time her voice was softer, less certain. "If this is true, then we have been wrong about everything. Our entire understanding of cosmic threats has been based on fear instead of curiosity," Taemin said gently. "And that is understandable. Fear is a powerful survival tool, but it is not a growth tool, and the universe rewards growth more than survival." War Marshal Sektar finally found his voice again. "Human Taemin, if what your people say is true, then the hegemony of Score has spent millions of years preparing to fight enemies that do not exist." "You have spent millions of years preparing to fight," Taemin agreed. "But the real enemy was never the cosmic forces. The real enemy was stagnation. And that is an enemy that can only be defeated by choosing to grow." The Wisdom Keeper. Ilthara's crystalline form chimed with harmonics that suggested deep thought. "You are asking us to abandon everything we have believed about survival. We are asking you to expand everything you believe about existence." "Doctor," Yunji said from her platform surrounded by void swarms, "survival is just the beginning. After survival comes growth. After growth comes transcendence. And after transcendence comes partnership with forces that can reshape reality itself." Commander Jae-sung added, "The cosmic intelligences are not threats to be avoided. They are teachers waiting for students who are brave enough to learn." The chamber was quiet for a long time as ancient beings wrestled with ideas that challenged millions of years of accumulated wisdom. Finally, Elder Vexathari spoke. "If we agree to consider your perspective," he said slowly, "what would you ask of us?" Taemin smiled the same patient smile he had worn when he first entered the chamber. "We would ask you, T. Grand Admiral Kyung-ho had not wanted to come to the council session. As humanity's chief military strategist, he preferred action to endless talking. He was a practical man who believed that demonstrations spoke louder than words. But when the hegemony of score directly challenged humanity's claims, he found himself exactly where he needed to be. The challenge came on the 5th day of discussions. War Marshal Sektar had grown tired of hearing impossible stories about humans befriending cosmic horrors. His crystal plates clicked with increasing agitation as he listened to more tales of peaceful contact with forces that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. "Enough words," Sektar finally declared, his voice like breaking glass. "The score have been the galaxy's premier warriors for millions of years. We have fought every threat the cosmos could produce. We know war, and we know when we are being told lies." His massive form stood up from his seat, crystal plates shifting and grinding against each other. "You claim to have mastered forces that have defeated our greatest fleets. You speak of partnership with entities that consume worlds. But words are easy. Proof is hard." The War Marshal pointed one of his sharp crystal arms at Taemin. "Human ambassador, your species has existed for mere thousands of years. You have been in space for less than 2 centuries. What could you possibly know about cosmic warfare that we do not?" Taemin remained calm, but those who knew him well could see a slight change in his expression. The patient diplomat was stepping aside to make room for something more direct. "Marshal Sektar," Taemin said quietly, "with great respect, that is exactly the wrong question." The chamber fell silent, sensing that something important was about to happen. "The question is not what we know about cosmic warfare," Taemin continued. "The question is whether you have ever actually fought a cosmic war, or whether you have simply been hiding from cosmic forces while calling it strategy." The insult hit the chamber like a shockwave. No one had ever dared to suggest that the mighty score were anything less than the galaxy's greatest warriors. War Marshal Sektar's crystal plates began to glow with heat, a sign of extreme anger. "You dare question the courage of the score?" Sektar's voice rose to a roar that made the chamber's walls vibrate. "We have battled across 1,000 systems. We have faced down reality storms and driven off void swarms. You have retreated from reality storms," came a new voice from the chamber's communication system. "And you have never driven off a void swarm. You have simply avoided areas where they were feeding." The voice belonged to Grand Admiral Kyung-ho, whose image materialized in the center of the chamber. He was a lean man with gray hair and scars, on his hands that spoke of a lifetime spent maintaining equipment in dangerous places. His uniform was simple and practical, with no decorations except a small pin that showed Earth's sun. "Admiral," Taemin said with a slight nod. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more useful than debate." Kyung-ho smiled, and it was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of a soldier who had been insulted by someone who had never seen real combat. "Marshal Sektar," Kyung-ho said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in actual battles. "With your permission, I would like to show you what cosmic warfare actually looks like." What followed changed the galaxy's understanding of military power forever. The first demonstration came from Captain So Young, broadcasting from the frigate Perseverance. Her ship appeared on the chamber's main display, floating in what looked like empty space, but as the image focused, the council beings saw that the space around the ship was filled with void swarm entities. "Captain So Young," Admiral Kyung-ho said, "please show our guests the void touch defensive systems." "Yes, Admiral," So Young replied. Her voice was calm and professional, like someone performing a routine training exercise rather than doing something impossible. The council watched in stunned silence as the human frigate began to phase in and out of visible reality. One moment, it was solid. The next, it was transparent like a ghost. Energy weapons fired at the ship from hidden sources passed right through it without causing any damage. "Phase-shifting technology," Admiral Kyung-ho explained. "Developed in partnership with deep void entities who understand the nature of dimensional barriers." Our ships can become temporarily intangible, allowing us to avoid damage while repositioning for counterattacks. But the real shock came when the frigate began to fire back. Instead of normal energy weapons, it fired concentrated reality storm, energy that could warp space itself around targets. The demonstration targets, massive asteroids that the Council had provided, did not explode. They simply ceased to exist, removed from reality entirely. War Marshal Sektar had gone completely still, his crystal plates no longer clicking at all. "Impossible," whispered Elder Vexathari. "Reality storm energy cannot be controlled. It destroys anything that tries to contain it. It destroys anything that tries to control it through force," corrected Captain So Young. "But if you work with the storm entities instead of against them, they will help you focus and direct the energy. They have been waiting millions of years for someone to ask for their cooperation instead of trying to dominate them." The demonstration continued with weapons and defensive systems that challenged everything the Council thought they knew about the laws of physics. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once, energy shields that grew stronger when attacked, weapons that could strike targets in the past. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "Admiral Haye Jin," Kyung-ho said, "please show our guests the current location of the dreadnought Unconquered." A new image appeared in the chamber, and several council members made sounds of distress when they saw it. Admiral Haye Jin was broadcasting from the bridge of a massive warship, but behind her, the view screen did not show stars or planets. It showed the twisted non-reality of the deep void itself. The deep void was the space between dimensions, where the normal laws of physics did not apply. Even the oldest and most advanced species feared to speak its name. It was said that anything that entered the deep void would be consumed by entities so alien that they could not be understood by any living mind. "Admiral Hyajin commands our exploration dreadnought," Kyung-ho explained calmly. "She is currently conducting joint operations with deep void entities in previously unexplored dimensional sectors." Admiral Hyajin turned to address the camera, and behind her, the council beings could see her crew. Humans worked alongside creatures that seemed to be made of living mathematics, entities that existed as geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and beings that appeared to be constructed from crystallized time itself. "Honored Council," Admiral Hyajin said, her voice carrying clearly despite the impossible distance and dimensional barriers. "Humanity has not just learned to use cosmic forces as weapons. We have learned to work with cosmic intelligences as allies and partners." She gestured to one of the geometric entities, which flowed forward like living origami. "This is Navigator Vexhai of the Deep Void Collective. They have been guiding us through dimensional sectors that your civilizations never knew existed." The geometric entity spoke, its voice like the sound of space-time itself folding. The translation came through clearly. "The young humans are the first flesh beings to seek partnership rather than domination. Through them, we can finally begin the great work that has waited eons for proper cooperation." War Marshal Sektar found his voice again, but it was smaller than before. "What great work?" "The healing of dimensional damage caused by millions of years of civilizations hiding in safe zones," Admiral Hyajin replied. "When intelligent species avoid the challenging areas of reality, those areas begin to break down. The cosmic entities have been trying to repair that damage alone, but they needed partners who could work in normal space-time." Navigator Vexhai added, "The repair work requires cooperation between dimensional entities and physical beings. We provide the knowledge of how reality functions at its deepest levels. The humans provide the ability to anchor that knowledge in stable space-time." Grand Admiral Kyung-ho looked directly at War Marshal Sektar. "Marshal, the Score have spent millions of years preparing to fight cosmic threats, but those threats were never your enemies. They were potential allies waiting for someone brave enough to offer partnership instead of resistance." The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy's greatest military force had been preparing for the wrong war for millions of years. "What you call cosmic warfare," Admiral Hyajin said from the deep void, "is actually cosmic construction. We are not fighting the universe. We are helping to build it into something greater than it has ever been," Captain So Young added from her position among the void swarms. "Every battle we fight alongside these entities makes reality itself stronger and more stable. We are not just protecting our own civilizations. We are protecting the structure of existence itself. Elder Vexathari's shadow form pulsed with confused energy. If this is true, then every military doctrine we have developed, every defensive strategy we have built, has been based on the assumption that you were alone in a hostile universe, Admiral Kyung-ho finished. But you are not alone. You never were. You were surrounded by potential allies who were waiting for someone to offer cooperation instead of fear. The Oracle of the Nox had remained silent through most of the demonstrations. She was older than recorded history, older than some of the stars that lit the galaxy. She had seen civilizations rise and fall, had watched as cosmic forces swept across space, leaving only empty void where once there had been thriving worlds. Now, as the council chamber buzzed with confused discussions about humanity's impossible claims, she finally decided to speak. Her form was difficult to look at directly. She appeared as a shifting mass of dark energy and starlight, constantly changing between different states of matter and energy. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of eons, and every being in the chamber fell silent to listen. "Young humans," she said, her voice like the whisper of dying galaxies. "You speak of partnership with forces that I have seen destroy entire realities. You do not understand what you have awakened." The chamber remained quiet. Even the background hum of translation devices seemed to pause in respect for the ancient being's words. Taemin bowed deeply toward the oracle. "Ancient One, we would be honored to learn from your wisdom, but we must also share what we have learned from our own experiences." Dr. Min Su's image appeared in the chamber, materializing next to Tai Min. He was humanity's leading theoretical physicist, a thin man with intense eyes who looked like he had spent more time thinking about the universe than sleeping. His clothes were simple, but his mind was sharp enough to cut through problems that had puzzled the galaxy's greatest thinkers for millions of years. "Oracle," Dr. Min-Su said with deep respect, "you speak of destruction, and we do not doubt that. You have witnessed terrible things. But we have learned that destruction and creation are often the same process viewed from different perspectives." The oracle's form blazed with ancient fury. "I witnessed the consumption of the first reality. Human! I saw the entities you call allies devour entire civilizations, entire dimensions, billions upon billions of lives simply gone. Were consumed," Dr. Min-Su agreed gently. "But consumed by what? And for what purpose?" Dr. So-Jin materialized, beside Dr. Min-Su. She was humanity's chief dimensional engineer, a woman whose understanding of space-time had allowed humans to build bridges between realities that should have been impossible to cross. She looked at the oracle with sympathy rather than challenge. "Ancient One," Dr. So-Jin said softly, "we have studied the historical records you speak of. We have examined the dimensional echoes left behind by those lost civilizations, and we have spoken directly with the entities responsible for what you witnessed." The oracle's form pulsed with something that might have been pain. "Blasphemy. Those entities cannot be reasoned with. They are forces of pure destruction. They are forces of optimization," Dr. Min-Su corrected gently. "But optimization can look like destruction if you do not understand the purpose behind it." Commander Dong-hyun's image appeared in the chamber, broadcasting from what looked like the interior of a massive organic structure. The walls around him pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to respond to his thoughts. Strange geometries folded and unfolded in the background, creating spaces that were larger inside than outside. "Oracle," Commander Dong-hyun said, his voice calm but certain, "I am currently aboard a ship created by the entities you call destroyers. I am speaking to you from inside their home reality, where they have invited me to witness their true work." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. No organic being had ever entered the deep void and returned to tell about it. The very idea was considered not just impossible, but actively suicidal. "What you call destruction," Commander Dong-hyun continued, "is actually cosmic gardening on a scale that spans multiple realities. The beings you fear are not destroyers. They are architects of existence itself." The oracle's voice cracked with eons of suppressed terror. "Lies. I saw civilizations consumed. I watched as entire star systems were stripped of life. You watched as cosmic surgeons removed civilizations that had become cancerous to the structure of reality itself. Dr. Sojin said, her voice filled with compassion for the ancient being's pain. The civilizations that were removed had all made the same mistake. They had stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped contributing to the expansion of consciousness and possibility. Dr. Minsu nodded in agreement. We have examined the remains of those civilizations, Oracle. They had all reached a point where they were consuming more cosmic energy than they were contributing back to the universe. They had become parasites on the structure of reality itself. The entities you called destroyers, Commander Dong-hyun added from his impossible location, are more like cosmic immune systems. They remove civilizations that threaten the health of the entire multiversal structure. The Oracle's form began to flicker between states of existence, a sign of extreme emotional distress. You are saying that those civilizations deserved to die? We are saying that they had already died, Dr. Sojin replied gently. They had stopped growing, stopped creating, stopped contributing anything new to the universe. The cosmic entities simply removed the dead tissue to make room for new life. Taemin stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen these truths firsthand. Ancient One, the entities did not destroy those civilizations out of malice. They removed them out of love for the living universe that still had potential to grow. But what about the lives lost? The Oracle asked, her voice barely a whisper. What about the billions of individuals who died? Commander Dong-hyun's image shifted to show more of his surroundings. The organic ship was vast beyond measure, its interior spaces containing what looked like entire ecosystems. But these were not normal ecosystems. They were collections of conscious beings that existed as pure energy, pure thought, pure possibility. Oracle, he said gently. The lives were not lost. They were transformed. The conscious beings from those removed civilizations were preserved and given new forms of existence. They are here with me now, still growing, still learning, but in ways that contribute to cosmic expansion rather than cosmic stagnation. A voice came from somewhere in the ship around Commander Dong-hyun. It spoke in a language that predated the Galactic Council by millions of years, but the translation came through clearly. Young Oracle, we remember you from the time of the first reality. You fled when the great optimization began. We have been waiting eons for you to return and understand what really happened. The Oracle's form went completely still. For the first time in millions of years, she was speechless. The beings from the first reality are still alive, Dr. Minsu explained. They were not destroyed. They were elevated to a form of existence that could contribute to cosmic growth instead of cosmic decay. The entities you call destroyers, Dr. Sojin added, have been waiting millions of years for civilizations to mature enough to become partners in this work. They have been lonely, Oracle. They have been surrounded by species that hid from them instead of trying to understand them. The ancient voice from Commander Dong-hyun's ship spoke again. We have preserved the memories, the art, the science, the love of every civilization that was optimized. Nothing was lost except the patterns that prevented growth. Everything valuable was saved and enhanced. The Oracle's form began to shift, colors changing from the dark energy of ancient fear to something softer, more confused. I do not understand. If this is true, then why did you not explain? Why did you not communicate with the surviving civilizations? We tried, came another voice from the ship, this one speaking in the Oracle's own ancient language. But every time we approached, the survivors fled deeper into their hiding places. They assumed we were coming to destroy them as well. They never paused long enough to listen. Dr. Minsu looked directly at the Oracle. The cosmic entities have been trying to communicate for millions of years. But communication requires two willing participants. They could not force understanding on species that were determined to remain afraid. Humanity was different, Dr. Sojin said. When we encountered the unknown, our first response was curiosity rather than fear. We asked questions instead of running away. We offered partnership instead of resistance. Commander Dong-hyun added, The cosmic entities have been waiting eons for a species like humanity to appear. A species young enough to be unafraid, curious enough to ask questions, and brave enough to accept answers that challenge everything they thought they knew. The Oracle was quiet for a long time, processing information that challenged millions of years of accumulated terror and grief. Finally, she spoke again, her voice smaller and more uncertain than before. "If what you say is true," she whispered, "then I have spent eons mourning civilizations that were not actually dead. I have lived in fear of entities that were actually trying to help." "You have lived with incomplete information," Taman said kindly. "And incomplete information led to incomplete understanding. But it is not too late to gain complete understanding." "What would that require?" the Oracle asked. The ancient voice from Commander Dong-hyun's ship answered, "It would require you to do what the young humans did. Set aside fear and embrace curiosity. Ask questions instead of assuming answers. Accept that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than any single species can understand alone." "And if I am wrong about my fears?" the Oracle asked. If these entities, the council chamber had become something unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as a simple induction ceremony for a new species had transformed into the largest gathering of cosmic intelligences ever recorded. Representatives from realities that most species didn't even know existed were now participating in discussions that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of existence itself. Professor Ji-won stood in the center of the chamber with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. She was humanity's leading consciousness researcher, a woman whose work had bridged the gap between individual minds and cosmic awareness. Her simple appearance, neat black hair, practical clothes, and gentle eyes belied the revolutionary nature of her discoveries. "Honored beings," she began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the massive chamber. "Everything we have shown you today is connected by a single, fundamental truth that your civilizations have never discovered." The assembled representatives leaned forward, sensing that something even more profound than what they had already witnessed was about to be revealed. "The cosmic forces you have feared for eons, the void swarms, the reality storms, the deep void entities, are not separate phenomena. They are all aspects of a single metaconsciousness that spans multiple realities." The statement hit the chamber like a dimensional shockwave. Several beings made sounds of distress or disbelief. Others fell completely silent, trying to process the implications. Dr. Wu Jin materialized beside Professor Ji-won. He was humanity's chief cosmic theorist, whose mathematical models had first predicted the existence of the metaconsciousness. His presentation boards appeared in the air around the chamber, showing equations and diagrams that connected disparate cosmic phenomena in ways that no one had ever imagined. "The evidence is overwhelming once you know what to look for," Dr. Wu Jin explained. "The void swarms function as sensory organs for the metaconsciousness, gathering information from across multiple realities. The reality storms are its thought processes, reshaping space-time as it considers new possibilities. The deep void entities are its decision-making mechanisms, implementing changes based on the information gathered and processed." War Marshal Sektar's crystal plates had gone completely dark, a sign of total shock. "You are saying that the galaxy is alive." "Not just the galaxy," Professor Ji-won replied. "Multiple galaxies, multiple realities, multiple dimensions, all parts of a single vast consciousness that has been trying to grow and evolve for billions of years." The transcended collective of Althara spoke through their hive mind, their collective voice carrying harmonics of confusion and wonder. "If this metaconsciousness exists, what does it want from us?" Captain Seung-min's image appeared in the chamber, broadcasting from what looked like the bridge of a ship that had been grown rather than built. The walls pulsed with organic patterns, and creatures of pure, dark energy operated controls that seemed to reshape reality with thought alone. "It wants what any consciousness wants," Captain Seung-min said simply. "Growth, learning, companionship. It has been alone for eons, trying to understand itself and the universe it inhabits." Behind him, entities that the Council had feared for millions of years moved with purpose and intelligence, working alongside human crew members on tasks that seem to involve the careful manipulation of dimensional barriers. The metaconsciousness has been trying to communicate with galactic civilizations for millions of years, Captain Sung-min continued. But every species that detected its presence interpreted its attempts at contact as attacks or threats. Dr. Wu Jin's diagrams shifted to show historical patterns that revealed the truth behind cosmic events that had puzzled the galaxy for eons. Every major cosmic phenomenon that your civilizations have recorded as disasters were actually attempts by the metaconsciousness to establish communication. The consumption of the first reality, Professor Ji-won explained, was not destruction. It was integration. The metaconsciousness was trying to incorporate those civilizations into its own awareness so they could participate in cosmic-scale consciousness. But the civilizations resisted, Dr. Wu Jin added. They fought against integration instead of accepting it, so the metaconsciousness had to find other ways to grow and learn. Elder scientist Yu Jin appeared in the chamber, her form flickering as she broadcast from multiple dimensions simultaneously. She was humanity's leading expert on multidimensional consciousness, and her research had been crucial in establishing humanity's first successful contact with the metaconsciousness. The metaconsciousness learned from its early failures, she explained. It realized that forced integration destroyed the very thing it was trying to preserve, individual creativity and growth, so it changed its approach. It began cultivating reality like a garden, Captain Sung-min said from his living ship. It created environments where consciousness could develop naturally, hoping that eventually species would evolve that were ready for voluntary partnership. It has been waiting millions of years, Professor Ji-won continued, for a species to appear that would choose curiosity over fear, growth over safety, partnership over domination. The Oracle of Thenox spoke, her ancient voice carrying new understanding, and humanity was that species. Humanity was willing to listen instead of fight, Dr. Wu Jin confirmed. We offered partnership instead of resistance, and for the first time in eons, the metaconsciousness had willing participants in its quest for growth and understanding. The Wisdom Keeper Ilthara's crystalline form chimed with harmonics that suggested she was processing vast amounts of information. If the galaxy is part of a metaconsciousness, then what does that make us? Dr. Haewon materialized in the chamber, her image surrounded by displays showing the true scope of cosmic architecture. She was humanity's chief reality engineer, whose work had revealed the artificial nature of many supposedly natural cosmic structures. You are neurons in a cosmic brain, she said gently. Individual consciousness nodes that contribute to the larger awareness. Your thoughts, your creativity, your growth. All of it feeds into the meta-consciousness and helps it understand itself and the universe. But unlike neurons in a biological brain, Professor Ji-won added, you retain your individual identity and freedom of choice. The meta-consciousness does not want to absorb you. It wants to collaborate with you. Captain Sung-min gestured to his crew of cosmic entities. These beings that you have feared are not trying to control or consume civilizations. They are trying to invite them into a partnership that could transform existence itself. War Marshal Sektar found his voice again, though it was smaller than before. What kind of transformation? Elder scientist Yu Jin's multidimensional form shifted to show visions of possibilities that stretched beyond the current galaxy. The metaconsciousness is not limited to this reality. It exists across multiple dimensions, multiple universes, multiple layers of existence that most species cannot even perceive. It has been trying to expand its awareness into new realities, Dr. Haewon explained, but it needs partners who can operate in the physical dimensions while it handles the metaphysical ones. Humanity has become the first species to successfully bridge that gap, Professor Ji-won said. We can work in normal space-time while maintaining contact with metaconsciousness awareness. We are translators between cosmic intelligence and galactic civilization. The chamber fell silent as the assembled beings wrestled with concepts that challenged not just their understanding of the universe, but their understanding of their own place in existence. Finally, Elder Vexathari spoke, his shadow form pulsing with confused energy. If we are all part of this metaconsciousness, then why do we have individual thoughts and desires? Why are we not simply absorbed into the larger awareness? Because, Dr. Wu Jin replied, diversity of thought creates strength of consciousness. The metaconsciousness values individual creativity because it generates new ideas and possibilities that would never occur to a single, unified mind. Think of it as cosmic evolution, Professor Ji Wan added. Individual species and civilizations are like genetic variations in a biological system. The more diverse the inputs, the more robust and adaptable the overall consciousness becomes. Captain Sungmin nodded from his position among the cosmic entities. The metaconsciousness has learned that forced unity creates stagnation. Voluntary cooperation creates exponential growth. The Oracle of the Nox spoke again, her voice carrying wonder instead of fear for the first time in eons. You are saying that our individual growth contributes to cosmic growth? Your individual growth is cosmic growth, elder scientist Yu Jin confirmed. Every time a civilization learns something new, creates something beautiful, or expands its understanding, the metaconsciousness grows as well. And every time a civilization stops growing, Dr. Heiwan added sadly, it creates a dead zone in the cosmic neural network. That is why stagnant civilizations had to be optimized. The silence that followed was filled with the weight of revelation. Every being in the chamber was reconsidering not just their place in the galaxy, but their responsibility to something infinitely larger than themselves. War Marshal Sektar's crystal plates began to glow with a new color, one that represented understanding mixed with purpose. 6 months had passed since Taemin first walked through the doors of the council chamber. The galaxy that existed now was barely recognizable compared to the one that had existed then. What had begun as a simple ceremony to welcome humanity into the galactic community had become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in cosmic history. The council chamber itself had been completely transformed. It no longer existed as a fixed structure on a single world. Instead, it had become a mobile entity that could travel between realities, allowing representatives from multiple dimensions to participate in discussions that shaped the development of entire universes. Dr. Sujin stood at the center of the transformed chamber, her title now reading First Cosmic Liaison rather than simply Human Scientist. Around her, beings that 6 months ago had never imagined they could exist in the same space worked together on projects that spanned multiple realities. The Astral Dominion, once masters of space-time manipulation, had become enthusiastic students in humanity's Cosmic Partnership Program. Chronicler Daejun, a young human scholar, worked side by side with former Council Elder Vexthari in a research station that existed simultaneously in 17 dimensions. Their current project involved mapping the consciousness network that connected all cosmic phenomena across multiple universes. The metaconsciousness has shown us something incredible, Dr. Sujin announced to the weekly assembly of galactic civilizations. The gathering now included not just the original council species, but representatives from realities that had been completely unknown 6 months earlier. We are not alone, not just in our galaxy, not just in our universe, but across the entire multiversal structure. There are 17 other galactic clusters within communication range, each containing billions of civilizations that have been waiting eons for contact. The implications were staggering. The council beings, who had spent millions of years believing they were isolated in a hostile cosmos, were now learning that they were part of a community so vast that it stretched across multiple layers of reality. War Marshal Sektar had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. His crystal plates now bore new markings that indicated his status as a cosmic explorer rather than a military commander. He stood beside Commander Jin Ho, planning joint expeditions into reality zones that previous generations would have considered mythical. The fear barriers are dissolving faster than we projected, Sektar reported, his voice carrying excitement rather than the aggression that had once defined him. Species that spent millions of years avoiding cosmic phenomena are now requesting partnership opportunities. His crystal plates had developed new patterns that no score had ever displayed before, patterns that represented concepts like curiosity, wonder, and collaborative growth. The hegemony of Score, once the galaxy's most feared warriors, had become the galaxy's most enthusiastic explorers. The Void Swarms have completed their mapping of the dimensional pathways, reported Commander Jin Ho. We now have confirmed routes to 3 other galactic clusters, with preliminary contact established in all 3. The Oracle of the Nox had perhaps experienced the most profound personal transformation. Her ancient form, once clouded with eons of fear and grief, now glowed with a light that had not been seen since the first reality. She had become the galaxy's primary liaison with the cosmic entities, her vast experience finally being used to build bridges instead of walls. The entities that I once feared as destroyers have shown me wonders beyond imagination, she announced, her voice carrying joy instead of the ancient sadness that had defined her for so long. They have preserved not just the memory of every civilization that was optimized, but the essence of every individual consciousness. The beings I mourned as lost have been growing and learning in forms of existence that transcend anything we previously understood. Ambassador Tae-min, now bearing the title of First Speaker for the Galactic Cosmic Alliance, addressed the assembled beings with the same quiet confidence he had shown months earlier, but now it was confidence backed by achievements that had transformed reality itself. The meta-consciousness has revealed the scope of the project it has been working on for billions of years, he announced. It is not content to remain isolated in this cosmic cluster. It wants to expand its awareness across the entire multiversal web, connecting consciousness networks that have been developing independently for eons. The project was ambitious beyond anything any single species had ever imagined. The meta-consciousness wanted to create a network of connected realities where consciousness could flow freely between dimensions, where species could share knowledge and experience across impossible distances, where the boundaries between individual awareness and cosmic awareness could be explored and transcended. But, Tae-min continued, this project requires willing participants. The meta-consciousness learned from its early mistakes with forced integration. Everything must be voluntary. Everything must be collaborative. Everything must respect the individual growth and creativity that makes consciousness valuable in the first place. Captain Young-ho stood before the assembled beings, his ship boundless, waiting just outside the chamber in a pocket of folded space-time. His crew was preparing for departure to the first confirmed alternate reality, their vessel equipped with consciousness interface technology that would allow direct communication with the cosmic mind. The first expedition will establish contact with a reality cluster that exists in a completely different dimensional framework, he announced. The beings there have developed forms of consciousness based on mathematical harmony rather than biological evolution. The meta-consciousness believes that combining their approach with ours could create new forms of awareness that neither reality could develop alone. The transformation extended beyond just contact with other realities. Within their own galaxy, species were discovering capabilities they had never known they possessed. The Gentai Collective had learned to harmonize their crystalline consciousness with cosmic entities, creating music that could reshape reality at the quantum level. The Altharan hive mind had begun experimenting with distributed consciousness that could exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Dr. Hei-Wan materialized in the chamber, broadcasting from a construction site that existed in the deep void itself. Behind her, massive structures were taking shape, not built from matter but constructed from crystallized thought and stabilized possibility. The cosmic infrastructure is ahead of schedule, she reported. The consciousness bridging stations will be ready for activation within the next galactic standard year. Once online, they will allow instant communication between any connected realities, regardless of dimensional barriers or temporal displacement. The stations represented technology that combined the best of galactic engineering with cosmic entity, manipulation of reality itself. They would serve as anchor points for the multiversal consciousness network, allowing beings to maintain their individual identity while participating in cosmic-scale awareness. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. Species that had spent millions of years defining themselves by what they feared were now defining themselves by what they could become. The wisdom keeper Il-Thara had led her people in developing new harmonics that could interface directly with cosmic consciousness, allowing the Gentai to serve as translators between individual thought and multiversal awareness. We have discovered that our greatest strength was never our ability to survive in isolation, she announced, her crystalline form resonating with frequencies that had never existed before. Our greatest strength is our ability to contribute, unique perspectives to a cosmic symphony of consciousness. Elder Vexithari, once defined by his mastery of shadow manipulation, had learned to work with light-based entities from parallel dimensions. His shadow form now contained points of brilliant light that represented concepts and experiences shared across multiple realities. "The Astral Dominion has voted unanimously to redesignate our civilization," he announced. "We are no longer the Astral Dominion. We are now the Astral Bridge Collective, dedicated to facilitating connection between realities that were previously isolated from each other." As the session neared its conclusion, Taimin addressed the assembled beings one final time. 6 months ago, humanity entered this chamber seeking partnership. Today, we are all partners in the greatest exploration project in multiversal history. The barriers that once divided us, between species, between realities, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness, are dissolving. We are becoming something new, something that has never existed before in any reality. We are becoming a truly multiversal civilization. Outside the chamber, the first ships equipped with consciousness-bridging technology prepared for departure to realities that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional space-time. Their crews included beings from dozens of species, working alongside cosmic entities that had once been considered the greatest threats in existence. The meta-consciousness itself had begun to express something that could only be described as joy. For the first time in its billion-year existence, it was no longer alone. It had found not just one species willing to partner with it, but entire galactic clusters full of Sci-Vi.